Read to Lead podcast, episode 116. Hi there, I am Jeff, and this is not the typical podcast episode, no music, no guest, just a brief solo episode with yours truly. And I want to share a little bit about what I've experienced recently in the hopes of maybe offering encouragement or help to you if you or someone you know suffers from this issue occasionally as well. And that's the topic of anxiety. And I even hesitate to mention it here because it's something that I've only been hit with 2 times that I can think of in the last 3 years. So I don't believe it to be something that is going to be a problem for me long term. At least I certainly hope that's the case. And it's certainly not something I've been clinically diagnosed as suffering from. But sharing this experience to Read to Lead listeners on my email list has proven to be quite encouraging, and I thought you might benefit from some of that encouragement. If you're not on the email list, you don't know anything about this, which is why I thought it might be a good thing for all of us to come together and share about it a little more openly. Certainly, if you're prompted to do so, feel free to shoot me an email, jeff@readtoleadpodcast.com. So just to bring you up to speed, a couple of times in the last few years, I have been hit without any sort of idea that this was coming, no warning, with at least 2 bouts of what I would call anxiety or panic attacks. And in my case, both instances were in similar scenarios. Both were when I was giving an interview. I was being interviewed by someone on another podcast, of all things. You wouldn't think that would be a problem for me, especially in light of the fact that I spent 2.5 decades in radio, much of that doing a nationally syndicated morning show, talking to thousands of people live at any given time. I get up and speak publicly on a fairly regular basis, and that hasn't proven to be a problem either. I get nervous certainly from time to time, but certainly don't have a problem executing a decent presentation. And so the only thing I could put my finger on when it comes to this is in both instances, I felt like inside that I was on a platform, on a show, on a stage that I did not deserve to be on, that I had not officially earned the right to be on. Not that I had intentionally pulled the wool over anybody's eyes. In fact, I had not sought out either opportunity. They had both come to me. And I had almost said no because of this feeling inside. But I said yes anyway because it felt like the opportunities were too good to pass up. Now, there was no warning leading up to either interview that I wasn't nervous, had no kind of indication that either would be a problem. But as the host was asking their first question, which was something along the lines of share a bit about your background and how you came to do what you're doing today, or something like that, a question that no one on the planet is more qualified to answer than me. And while the question was being asked, I froze to the point that there were several seconds of silence, what felt like an eternity, after the host finished asking the question, before I could say anything at all, before I could get anything out of my mouth. And the reason I think it's important to talk about this here is because I had to confess, I think, and have since confessed to one of the 2 podcast hosts that I lied in that moment, that I lied in that instance. In one case, I feigned a coughing fit and turned my microphone off and came back a few seconds later and was able to get through the interview. In fact, was able to do just fine and enjoy the process. In the second one, I pretended to have heard a crash in an adjacent room and had to go check on my wife to make sure she was okay. I made that up in the moment. It was a complete lie. Was able to come back a minute or so later, answer the question that I was asked, and get through the rest of the interview to the point that the interviewer was talking at the end about how wonderful he thought it was and how great he thought the information I provided was, and I had no problem getting through the rest of it at all. It was just that first moment where I had that just crushing fear, imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it. And so I shared that, as I mentioned, in an email a couple of weeks ago. I've since shared it on a more public platform. I write occasionally for a website called The Good Men Project at goodmenproject.com. And I thought it would be good to share it here on the podcast. In particular, I wanted to share just a couple, or maybe 3 of the emails or a portion of them that I received in response to sharing about this via email a couple of weeks ago. And my hope here again is that if you identify with this at all, or you know someone who does, it can help them or encourage them or you. And also just so you know that though I may appear or sound as if I have it all together week in and week out, the reality is that's not always the case. And I think you need to know that, that I'm no better, no different than anybody else. And so one of the emails I want to share is from Tina, and I'm sharing first names only here just to protect identities. But Tina, toward the end of her email, very, very encouraging. She says, "Your confession is encouraging, especially to those of us who are trying to make our way in the business of writing and speaking." And this is really powerful, what she says. "Perfectionism is sometimes believed to be a requirement for credibility. Imperfection and the ability to admit it should give all of us more credibility. Stay the course. Anxiety can be conquered. It will rear its ugly head at the most inopportune times, but remind yourself of your experience in your profession. And if you make a mistake, laugh and use it as an example to others." I thought that was very encouraging and great advice, too, from Tina. It's important to note here, too, that if you suffer from this and it continues, you'll obviously at some point want to consider seeing your primary care physician and being evaluated. I don't believe that my situation warrants that at the moment, but just know that yours may if you haven't sought that help already. Joel also wrote me. He was one of dozens of people who responded to the email that went out, and he says, "Whenever I am tasked with going in front of a crowd to present, my body physically trembles, and this no matter how well I have prepared." He says, "Much of the time I don't even feel overly nervous. To the audience, though, I look visibly nervous, and just knowing I'm doing this creates additional anxiety, and my presentations often bomb." He says, "My point here is I can relate to what you shared, as I have a similar, though not the same issue. And knowing you're putting yourself out there and dealing with this type of thing gives me courage to do the same." That is awesome to hear, Joel. And he ends it by saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Keep it going." I appreciate that very much. And this last one, a short one from Emily. And she says, "Thank you for your courage and your bravery." And I have to admit, as I said in my article for the Good Men Project that talks about this, before hitting send on that email, I was thinking this is either brave or really, really stupid. I'm not sure which. But thankfully, the emails that have come back, I think, have confirmed that it wasn't a stupid thing to do. She says, "I hope you can be very compassionate and graceful with yourself, Jeff. We're all on a journey of learning." And my favorite part, she says, "Thanks for giving us all permission to be human." Thank you, Emily. I appreciate that very much. The hope here is to encourage you, to help you know that you are not alone if you suffer from this. And if it's at a point where it's, debilitating, again, you'll want to consult your physician to find out whether or not medication might be in order. I'm certainly not a doctor and don't pretend to know the best ways to handle that, but you'll certainly want to get an expert's advice if it's something that you feel is making it difficult to do the things that you need to do. So thank you for listening. I hope that this has been helpful to you. And if you want to chat about it further, again, you can write me, Jeff, at readtoleadpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next time, yes I do, for the next episode of the Read to Lead podcast.